Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson, and today, the final day of September, which means we are wrapping up Serial Killer September all around the world, and we are finishing up in Europe. We have a bigger episode today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stories for you, so let's jump into it right now. Story time! Story time! Story time? Story time! You know, it would help if I told you what the 5 stories were going to be about. But let's be honest, like, you've probably never heard of any of these people. So whatever. We're looking at the stories of Donato Valencia, Colin Ireland, Peter Tobin, Ladislav Hozier, and our first story here of Manuel Blanco Romasanta, who was born on November 18th, 1809 in Reguero, Spain. Reguero, Spain. I don't know, whatever. He was born Manuela after his parents initially thought he was a girl, which, like, I mean, talk about a micro penis. Like, look, baby wieners are not big by nature, right? Because proportion, babies are small. But for you to be fully born and for both of your parents to be like, I don't see a penis, it must be a girl, that's pretty bad. All right. I don't know if he was just like, he had an innie instead of an outie, like most of them are. I don't know, but that's wild. They even raised him as a girl for the first 6 years of his life. And look, maybe they were just stupid, you know, maybe they were that, you know, that real life, Family Guy bit, just like an obscure Family Guy bit where, a baby gets born and Dr. Hartman goes, congrats, it's a girl. Wait, it's got a penis. We need to cut it off. Like, so maybe the parents were just like, all right, we got a girl. I don't know why it's got a penis. We'll work with it. It's fine. But no, just a full on boy, all the boy parts there, but his parents either two complete idiots or he had some weird kind of plumbing situation going on. But whatever. Manuel was one of 5 children and he was really short, like full-sized adult. He was only 4'6", which I don't know if that's like legal little person or not, but if it isn't, it's close. He worked as a dressmaker and somehow actually got married. I can't imagine it was to someone shorter than him. But also, ladies, what are you doing? What is your wife? Like how, and then look, love, sure. I get it. Love makes us do all kinds of things, but marrying a 4'6" dude, like that's not even short king level. That's just sad. And I don't know. Whatever. Here's the thing though. His wife died a year later, so it didn't even count. And then he became a traveling salesman. So in 1844, Manuel was charged with the murder of Vicente Fernandez, a minister who had been tasked with collecting a debt of 600 reales from Manuel that he owed to a supplier. And that's wild, right? Like a minister also working as a debt collector, when I'm pretty sure Jesus would have been like, forgive the debts, man. Forgive, ooh, socialist Jesus. Ooh, that's got some buttholes puckered. Well, it's true. I'm pretty sure Jesus was not about charging interest. If you read the early parts of the Bible, at least the Jews were not supposed to charge interest. Some about that. I don't know. I got to brush up on my biblical understanding. Somebody in the Bible, somebody said charging interest was bad, and yet it's all we do. And so pretty sure though Jesus would have been like, hey, don't do that. But this priest was doing it, and then Manuel was like, no, and then he kills him. When Manuel failed to appear in court, he was convicted guilty by default and sentenced to 10 years in prison. However, instead of reporting for prison, Manuel just went on the run and hid in an abandoned shelter in the city of Ermita. After obtaining a fake passport and changing his name to Antonio Gomez, he crossed the border into Portugal and lived in the small village of Rebordechão. These names. I should have prepared. I didn't. He lived there for a year, working various jobs and making friends with the women in the village because he's a little tiny fella. They love that. He'd probably just like a little, when, the South Park episode when Paris Hilton dressed Butters in like a little bear costume. Like, I feel like that's what Manuel was to these women. Anyway. One of the jobs he worked in this village was as a guide to travelers, most of them being women, who were crossing the mountains back into Spain. And as you might expect, this being an episode about serial killers, those women and their children began disappearing. At the start, though, no one suspected anything since Manuel delivered letters to their respective residences letting the husbands know that their wives had safely arrived at their destinations. But when people noticed that Manuel was then selling clothing that had belonged to some of the travelers that he was guiding over the mountains, rumors began to spread through the village, including one that Manuel was selling soap made from human fat. In 1852, an anonymous person filed a formal complaint in Escalona alleging that Manuel was tricking women and children into traveling with him, where he would then murder them, remove their fat, and sell it as various products, which that's like... It starts out getting kind of believable. Like, yeah, a guy just murdering people out in the middle of nowhere for no reason. But then to get to just removing their fat and selling it as like soap or candles or whatever. Like, that's where, why would he not sell all of it? Sell the meat as well. But no, he's just, and like, I can't imagine he's exclusively taking fat chicks up into the mountains, right? So there's probably not a ton of fat on these people, especially if you are trekking, hiking for miles over these mountains to go back into Spain. You're probably not a beefy gal, all right? You're probably pretty lean. So there's not a lot of fat to go around. So whatever, I don't know. It's probably true though, because why else would he be in this episode? I forgot how this story goes, so I'm just along for the ride with you. Manuel was arrested that September in 1852 and brought to trial in Alariz. When asked to confess to his crimes, Manuel shocked the courtroom by saying that he had been cursed with lycanthropy, which is being a werewolf. Although he admitted to committing 13 murders, he insisted that he had done so only after transforming into a werewolf. Manuel claimed, "The first time that I transformed was in the mountains of Cusco. I came across two ferocious-looking wolves." I don't know what this accent is. "I suddenly fell to the floor and began to feel convulsions. I rolled over 3 times, and a few seconds later, I myself was a wolf." He claimed that he joined 2 other wolves for the next 5 days before returning to human form. He also noticed that his 2 new wolf buddies had turned back into humans, 2 brothers named Antonio and Don Genaro from Valencia, Spain. When the prosecutor asked Manuel to demonstrate his ability to transform into a werewolf, Manuel informed them that the curse only lasted for 13 years and that the time just so happened to expire the week before the trial began. Oh, darn. Sorry, guys. I'm no longer cursed. I'm not a werewolf anymore. This is all silly. We just need to let this go. A month later, doctors concluded that Manuel had made up his affliction, obviously. Although the court dropped 4 of the charges after it was determined they had actually been killed by wolves, Manuel was convicted of the other 9 murder charges. He was sentenced to death by garrote, which is like this sort of stool with a large cuff at the top used to strangle. It was basically like a strangling chair, which sounds way more horrifying than just like dropping from a noose in the gallows or something. However, Manuel never made it that far. He died a few days after arriving to prison. Some accounts say that he died from stomach cancer. Others claim that he was shot to death by a guard who wanted to see him transform into a werewolf. Hey, boy, turn into a dog. Pow. Oh, you're dead. All right. Anyway, our next story here, I don't know, whatever. Our next story here is of Ladislav Hozier, who was born on March 15th, 1958, somewhere in Czechoslovakia, when that was still a place. Both of his parents died of cancer when he was young, and his stepfather just decided to leave Ladislav and his brother Yaroslav all alone in an apartment in Motol. Even worse, Hozier was intellectually inferior and was considered pretty ugly by Czech standards, which would quickly cause a lot of problems, as we have seen several times before. Hosier, to his credit, he did his best to find some companionship. He placed ads in the local paper and actually had success getting people to respond, mainly because he advertised himself as a handsome, financially secure, middle aged man when he was the farthest thing from it. This dude was ugly, super ugly, not rich at all, very poor, not good. He's catfishing hard. And every encounter would go the same way. The woman would arrive to look for this handsome, rich, wealthy man, only to be repulsed immediately by Hosier's appearance and then quickly run away. Hosier also tried to meet women at parties, but had difficulty communicating with them. So now, not only is he ugly and poor, he's socially awkward and can't drum up a conversation. And I get it, right? I spent my 20s ugly and poor and, and not having to, you know how hard it is? Here's the thing. Look, it's not like I was ever going to find someone by going out to a bar or somewhere the old fashioned way and just meeting people in the wild. No, dating apps really helps me. Right. The problem was that I needed someone with a personality to help carry the conversation. But you would be surprised at how many of you women just have the personality of a slab of plywood. Just, I mean, no ability to carry on the conversation. So many of my conversations were just basically interviews and interrogations. Me trying to like ask questions to start a conversation and just getting like simple answers, no reciprocation. And like, that's hard. That's real hard for me. And like, I just couldn't do it. So, thankfully my wife, we were just like, oh, you like serial killers? I like serial killers. And then we just talked about serial killers for a while, which is a weird kind of red flag. Like if you look at it on paper, but it worked out so far. Anyway. So yeah, a lot of Sloth Hosier. He's this ugly little man, but he's lying. He's trying to catfish these women. These women show up in these public places. They see him. They're repulsed by him, and then they run away. All of these negative appearances then understandably led to a lot of hatred towards women, even if he inflicted it on himself by being a disingenuous person. He so much so that obviously he started killing them. His first victim was a woman named Eva that he killed in the town of Dachin on December 1st, 1978. Eva had actually left her third husband to meet a man at a theater that she was having an affair with when Hosier dragged her into some nearby bushes and strangled her to death before jerking it all over her body, which is crazy. Like, this wasn't even a woman he tried to catfish, but she probably deserved it. All right. She was on her third marriage. She was cheating on that guy. And then Hosier just grabs her out of a movie theater and then just paints a map of Hawaii all over her back, right? Because Eva had several men in her life that she was having affairs with, police immediately just suspected one of those guys were behind her murder. And one of those men actually confessed to the murder. He was probably tortured during interrogation to get that confession. But so Hosier, he's like already off the radar for that. 2 years later, on February 9th, 1980, Hosier murdered a medical student named Ivana on a night train from Prague to Dachin. As Ivana walked out of the train's restroom, Hosier crept up behind her and strangled her with her own scarf. Because there wasn't a lot of space to move around, Hosier was really only able to jerk it over her dead body a couple of times. Just the angles weren't right, didn't have enough like elbow room to really get into it. So then he just tossed her out of a window. Somehow, no one saw any of this happen on a moving train car. But wild speculation about the murder quickly sprang up. One of the suspects, a railroad worker, mysteriously committed suicide shortly after being questioned by police about it. Another suspect, a distant relative of this woman who was mostly unaware of what had happened, had an emotional breakdown at the funeral and committed suicide a few days later. Both of those instances led police to believe that it was one of those two men who had killed this person rather than Hosier. 6 months later, Hosier saw a woman by herself at the Ruzhin Reservoir Dam. Although she put up a fight, Hosier still strangled her. But this time, however, he prematurely just creamed his pants and didn't get a chance to, slap a ham over the top of her. And so he just kind of lost interest in finishing the job. So like, I don't think that she was dead yet. I think she's probably just unconscious. So he tied her body to a stone and chucked it in the reservoir and let her sink to the bottom, which is wild. On January 30th, 1981, Hozier met a woman named another Ivana, at a tram stop in Brno. When Hozier tried to talk to her, she ran away from him. That's how you know you're ugly, when women just, their first response is to just run away. And here's the thing, I feel like I've built this guy up to just look like this giant troll. He's not the ugliest guy. He kind of looks like Adam Driver, the guy who played Kylo Ren in Star Wars. He kind of looks like that. And look, I don't think Adam Driver is an attractive person. Some people are really into that, but that's kind of what he looked like. At least when he had his mustache. When he didn't, some of these pictures, just a real squinty-eyed barbarian, but not terrible, not so repulsively ugly, which and maybe that says something about the other men in Czechoslovakia at the time, where this dude is considered grotesquely ugly. He's not that bad. I'm looking at him right now. Little pencil mustache, which is a little creepy in and of itself, but just an Adam Driver looking face, long face, kind of a bigger nose, eyes that are squinty, but also kind of far apart, kind of like Adam Driver. Anyway, I don't know. It's not terrible, but apparently not for, Czech women. They hated him. So where are we at? Ivana ran away from him at the tram stop, and in response, Hozier chased her down, dragged her to a park, tried to rape her, and then strangled and stabbed her to death. He then cut off her breasts and genitals with a scissor blade and put the items in a plastic bag. He got home, he spread the genitals out on the kitchen table and just mashed his wiener on them before putting them in the refrigerator. There's clearly some deep psychological issues here, but what if that's just what he thought sex was? Is just mashing your wiener on stuff. Until you're dead. I don't know. That's also gross, man. Just having just a bloody, gushy guts on your kitchen counter and you're just mashing your wiener on them. Ugh. Anyway, a week later, after putting the pieces in the refrigerator, he took them out a week later and cooked them and ate them with mustard and horseradish. As you might expect, Hozier thought that horseradish vagina tasted awful and he flushed it all down the toilet. Yeah, absolutely. That's disgusting. It sounds terrible. And mustard vagina, not great either. All right. I'm guessing. All right. That's why, never mind. The low hanging fruit there. I'm not going there. As with the other murders, police did not suspect Hozier at all. Instead, they suspected that Ivana's killer was one of the Greek men that she had often met up with. However, a Jordanian student admitted to the murder and then unsuccessfully tried to kill himself. When police questioned this guy about the murder, he claimed that he just wanted to divert attention away from his failing report card so that he wouldn't bring shame to his family. How bad are your parents when you would rather confess to a murder that you didn't commit just so your family didn't know you were failing college? Oh, man. Hozier is just so lucky that the Czechoslovakia was just such a dumpster fire where you have all of these people making it seem real weird that they committed murders that they didn't actually commit. Later that year, on October 3rd, 1981, Hozier found a woman named Anna in a secluded area in Prague. This time, Hozier was actually able to sustain a conversation with her and actually convinced her to have sex with him. So maybe she was ugly. Who knows? Despite finally having the genuine human connection that he had been wanting his entire life, he finally got it. He won, you guys. He couldn't help himself. And he strangled her with her stockings, raped her, and then left her body in the bushes. So, yeah, whatever. Some people just can't be changed. For whatever reason, this was the murder that worried him the most. He openly admitted to it several times while drinking at his favorite bar, but no one believed him since, especially since like a mentally ill person had already confessed to the murder, which was impossible since that person was already in prison at the time. So you got this crazy guy in prison who admits to the murder, who somehow, Hosier is like the luckiest dude on earth. He kills all these women and then random dudes for their own selfish reasons because their lives are also miserable just confess to the murders. Like how bad is it in your country that life in prison is better than just being free out in public? But that's what happened here. Again, mentally ill fella. He's like, I did it, even though he was in prison already at the time of the murder. But whatever. When police they did finally realize like how impossible it was, the man said that his friend had instead just showed him the murder scene and told him how it happened. And that friend was Ladislav Hosier. Police quickly found Hosier, who admitted to the murder. In all, he confessed to 5 murders, with investigators believing that he committed at least 2 more. He was eventually sentenced to death and was executed on August 7th, 1986. Our next story here is of Colin Ireland, who was born in Kent, England, on March 16th, 1954, to an unmarried teenage couple. The father ran off shortly after Colin was born, leaving him and his mother bouncing around Kent, doing their best just to kind of get by. When his mother got married and pregnant with another child, she then placed Colin into another family's care. While Colin lived in Kent, he was propositioned 3 different times by men who wanted to molest him, though by all accounts, he managed to avoid it. Again, like these are just weird stories today. You're just like, hey, little boy, can I molest you? No, that's okay. And then he runs away. And that happened like 3 different times. Ireland also spent time in a detention center for theft. And while he was there, he intentionally set fire to another kid's belongings. Just cause, he did. I don't know if he hated the kid or not. He's just like, fire, bam. And then he does it. When Colin finally got out on his own, he struggled to maintain a job, mainly because he kept getting arrested. In 1975, he was convicted of stealing a car and committing 2 robberies. He was given an 18-month jail sentence, but was released after only 10 months. In 1977, he was given another 18-month sentence for extortion, followed by a 2-year sentence for robbery in 1980. In 1982, after serving all of those sentences, Colin married Virginia Zammit and moved in with her and her daughter. 3 years later, he was given another 6-month prison sentence for fraud. And then 2 years later, Virginia discovered that he was cheating on her and divorced him. After another marriage and divorce, Colin became homeless and moved to Southend-on-Sea, a modest-sized city kind of on the Thames estuary in southeast England. While there, he began visiting the Coleherne pub, the city's gay bar, in March of 1993. The idea of 2 men kind of punching their donuts together really infuriated him. But he kept frequenting these gay bars. Just a real conflicted guy. And he decided that something needed to be done about all these gays touching wieners or whatever they do. He started with Peter Walker, a 45-year-old choreographer who enjoyed sadomasochism. Peter took Colin back to his flat, where Colin suffocated him to death by placing a plastic bag over his head, which was Peter's probably having a great time with this, before he died, obviously. Before he left, Colin placed 2 teddy bears in the 69 position on top of Peter's body and then locked Peter's dogs in another room. Wait, I mean, like, why? It's just so stupid. The next day, Colin then called a journalist from The Sun and told them what he had done, adding that he wanted to become a famous serial killer. After killing another gay man in Southend-on-Sea, Colin met Perry Bradley III, son of a Texas Democratic Party fundraiser. Colin convinced Bradley to be tied up and have a noose tied around his neck because sometimes, sex just gets weird like that, After stealing nearly $400 from him, Colin then strangled Bradley with the noose. You knew that was going to happen. Even though he had killed 3 gay men and even told the local media about it, the murders were still not receiving any publicity. Frustrated with this lack of attention, he then met 33-year-old Andrew Collier and went back to Collier's flat. Before they had a chance to do a little uphill gardening, if you know what I mean, a fight erupted outside of Collier's window. The 2 looked out to see what was going on, and in order to get a better view, Colin grabbed a metal bar that was running across the window, which that seems like a real pointless detail in the story, but it's actually very important. Remember the metal bar, all right? So when the fight was over, they were like, oh man, that was cool. And then Colin tied Collier up and tried to get his bank information to rob him, just as he had done with the other guy. When Collier refused, Ireland killed Collier's cat and then strangled him with the noose. And then to make things so much weirder, Ireland put a condom on Collier's penis, put the dead mouth's cat on it, and then placed the dead cat's the dead cat's tail in Collier's mouth. So basically he like 69'd the cat with Collier. It's so stupid. It's so dumb. And the visual, just plopping a dead cat's penis or dead cat's mouth on a dead man's penis. Bonus points for the creativity, for sure. But why? Why? Like, so unnecessary. As Colin then rummaged through Collier's belongings, he found that Collier was HIV positive, which made him even angrier. Because God, how dare this gay man that I tried to have sex with be HIV positive and him not tell me, which I get it. I don't. So while still inside Collier's flat, Ireland called the police and asked why they hadn't linked all 4 murders to him yet, even though he had just committed this one. Why haven't you found me yet? Why don't you know these people are dying and that I'm doing it? He then left the house and forgot to wipe all the fingerprints that he had left, especially on that metal bar in the window. So, while police are investigating all of this, he meets 41-year-old Emmanuel Spiteri. After convincing Spiteri to be tied up, Colin then strangled him with the noose and set fire to the flat. A few hours later, he called police and told them to look for the body and that he was finally done killing gay people. Which, I mean, that's probably kind of a disappointment to the police because they hated gay people too. During the investigation, police found security footage of Spiteri leaving the pub with Colin. Colin admitted to being the man shown on camera, but didn't admit to being the killer, instead saying that he'd left Spiteri at his flat with another man. However, police soon found Colin's fingerprints inside Collier's flat on the metal bar that I told you about, storytelling, and then linked him to both murders. While awaiting trial, Colin confessed to the 3 other murders and told police he just pretended to be gay because gay people were easy targets. I'm not gay, you guys. They're just easy targets to kill. I'm not gay. Oh, I'm not gay. I promise. I'm really gay. I'm not gay. I swear to God, I'm so gay. I'm not. I'm really not. They're just easy to kill. And people hate them because it's the 90s and they're still weird about that. Anyway. He was given life sentences for each murder, and then on February 21st, 2012, he died in prison from pulmonary fibrosis and a broken hip. 2 more stories here. Peter Tobin was born on August 27th, 1946 in Renfrewshire, Scotland. Renfrewshire, Scotland. There it is. Renfrewshire, Scotland. He was the youngest of 8 children, and as has been demonstrated by many other stories, it's really difficult to keep track of that many kids, and Peter emerged as the problem child and was eventually sent to reform school. He later joined the French Foreign Legion, which is a thing. I don't know what it is. I'm not gonna. We're so far into. I don't care. He quickly deserted. It's kind of a little military group. In 1970, he was arrested for burglary and forgery in England and then sent to prison. After his release, Peter joined Thorn Athletic, an amateur soccer team, and had some success with them. He then moved to Sussex and married his 17-year-old girlfriend. The couple divorced a year later, and Peter married Sylvia Jeffries, who had 2 children together, though one died shortly after birth. Sylvia then left Peter in 1976 because he was abusive. In 1987, Peter then married Kathy Wilson and had a son with her. They divorced 3 years later. In each instance, all 3 of these women noted that Peter had been very charming when they first met, but then quickly turned into a sadistic, abusive psychopath once they got married. On August 4th, 1993, 2 14-year-old girls knocked on Peter's door and asked if they could stay there for a bit while they waited on Peter's neighbor to get home. At that point, Peter decided that it was going to be a great idea to just hold them at knife point, force them to drink vodka, and then rape them in front of his son. She's like, "Hey, boy, this is how you do it." No, that's not how you do it. When he was finished, Peter then turned on the gas taps, left the house in hopes that the girls would die from, inhalation of some sort. He then joined the Jesus Fellowship, under a false name. And so the Jesus Fellowship, also known as the Jesus Army, was this British charismatic evangelical movement known for street preaching. The movement actually disbanded in May 2019 after claims that its founder, Noel Stanton, and 2 others engaged in repeated sexual assaults of its members in the 1970s. So probably also part of this. But Peter Tobin just joins this street preaching group, which is weird, but also gives him a fake name. Those 2 girls that he tied up and tried to kill ultimately survived and helped police capture Peter the following year. He pleaded guilty and received a 14-year prison sentence. He was released 10 years later, almost as if the actual number of years you're sentenced to prison doesn't actually matter, as we have seen all over the world in all kinds of cases. In 2006, 2 years after his release, Peter was working under an alias to avoid being found out as a registered sex offender and evade police, who by now had issued a warrant for his arrest following, because he moved to a new city without notifying his probation officer. But he raped and stabbed Angelica Kluck to death in the garage of St. Patrick's Church, where they both worked. Peter was arrested soon after and was convicted of rape and murder. He was sentenced to life in prison and to serve a minimum of 21 years. So, again, why are you going to sentence someone to life in prison, but then be like, he's got to at least serve 21 before we maybe change our minds? No, so stupid. A month later, police connected Peter to the deaths of 2 other women who had disappeared back in 1991. And figuring that he definitely wasn't ever going to leave prison anyway, he claimed 48 additional murders, including those belonging to Bible John, an unidentified serial killer who operated in Scotland in 1968. Police have kind of disconnected him from those Bible John murders. Like, he's just a psychopath, and he just he definitely killed a lot of people. Did he kill 48 people? Probably not, but he killed multiple people. He then died on October 8th, 2022. He'd had all kinds of health problems and, whatever. He's just old. You get it. Our final story here is of Donato Balancia, who was born on July 10th, 1951 in southern Italy. But his family quickly relocated to the opposite side of the country near Genoa. Donato was a chronic bedwetter for the first 12 years of his life, and his mother, who was not a fan of constantly having to wash the sheets, regularly put his mattress out on the balcony to show their neighbors what kind of weird life was going on inside the Balancia house each night, right? It's just like, look at my son's pee-stained mattress. That's what it is. Look at my son's pee-stained mattress. Here's a bedwetter. Look at it. It's so yellow. It's like a Wario's outfit. Anyway, that was just for me. I'm sorry. Even worse, every night before bed, Donato's aunt would pull his pants down and just openly mock his tiny penis in front of his cousin. Like, what? It's just like, Donato, come here. No, Aunt Sylvia, I don't want to do it again. It happens every night. No, Donato, come here. It's not. Boys, come here. Put his pants down. Look at his tiny penis. Look at his little tiny penis. Look at Donato, little tiny penis. Oh my goodness, it's so tiny you barely see it. Look like a little Ditalini right there. Little tiny Ditalini penis. Oh my goodness. Anyway, you get it. I had to look, I didn't do a British accent mostly. So I had to do something. I had to break out the Italian. Anyway, Donato eventually dropped out of high school and worked odd jobs. In 1974, he was sent to prison for having an illegal gun and was ultimately committed to the psychiatric ward of Genoa General Hospital. Despite that, no one had any real reason to suspect him of being more than just a petty criminal. By 1997, however, Donato had become a compulsive gambler who eventually got sick of a friend who tricked him into a rigged card game and cost him over $250,000, which, good for him for having that kind of money at this point. Donato strangled this friend to death, but police attributed the cause of death to a heart attack. Donato then went out and shot the game operator and his wife. And at that point, Donato realized he really enjoyed murdering and decided to do it some more. Over the next few months, Donato shot a jeweler and his wife, a money changer, a security guard, an Albanian prostitute, a Russian prostitute, and another money changer. The next year, while receiving a mouth hug from a prostitute, Donato shot 2 security guards who interrupted their session, and then shot the prostitute, because why not? Each time, Donato shot them with a .38 caliber revolver with wad cutter bullets, which are primarily designed to shoot paper targets, not people. But he still killed them with it, which I guess is kind of impressive. The prostitute who got shot, though, in the middle of the mouth hug somehow survived this and provided a sketch of Donato to the police. While authorities tried to track him down, Donato was out killing more prostitutes, and as time went on, his desires changed, and instead he wanted to, quote, kill a woman, because apparently women are not prostitutes, or prostitutes aren't women, or whatever, however you want to phrase that. Anyway, it's weird. It's Italian. They're the worst. On April 12th, 1998, Donato boarded a train and found a woman traveling alone, which is never a good start. Women, don't be traveling alone. You know this. When she got up to use the bathroom, Donato followed her to the stall, used a skeleton key to barge in, and then shot her in the head on this moving train where there's all kinds of people who could hear a gunshot go off. Apparently they didn't, though, because a week later he boarded another train and did the same thing. So, because Italians are generally some of the most morally devoid people in Europe, it wasn't until these 2, quote, respectable women were murdered that police began to care about catching this serial killer who had been busy killing prostitutes this whole time. Whatever. Italian police quickly matched DNA from cigarette butts and a coffee cup and named Donato as the primary suspect. He was arrested 10 days later at his home after 8 days of interrogation. He finally confessed to 17 murders. He was given 13 life sentences plus 20 years for the attempted murder of the one prostitute that survived. All right, serial killers from around the world, the European edition in the books. Longer episode to wrap up the month, so there you go. Hope that was not as bad as the other 4 this month. It probably was. I'm just doing it. I'm doing the things. I should re-record this bit right now, but I'm not gonna, so we're just gonna see what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Like, you ever just be doing something and you're like, this isn't good. This is not going to be good. But you keep doing it. You know, maybe you're like baking a cake or some sort of casserole or it is, and you're just putting all the ingredients in. And as you're doing it, you're like, this is going to taste terrible. This is going to be bad. But you keep doing it anyway because you're this far into it. Why stop now? Anyway, number 1. Manuel Blanco Romasanta. His parents may have been genuinely stupid people, or he had the tiniest penis ever because they thought he was a girl for the first 6 years of his life. And then they were probably like, oh man, that is a penis. Whoa. Sorry about that, dude. We're going to call you dude now. And anyway, he killed some people. Number 2, Ladislav Hozier. If you look like Adam Driver in the Czech Republic, people are probably going to think you're the ugliest person on earth and women will run away from you. So I don't know, go be a movie star in America. That he's got an audience here. So that works out. And then number 3, Colin Ireland. He super hated gay people, but was he gay himself? Probably. That's, you know how those go. So he did those things.
What did we learn?
Next week on Our Weird World, it is October, which means it's our spooky themed month. Ghosts and demons and monsters and aliens all have episodes coming up next month. So all kinds of small little stories from around the world, just on ghosts that people have seen. That'll be next week. Ghosts, all about ghosts. We'll have another episode on some demons to make some of you uncomfortable. And then we'll have some on monsters that are probably not real. And then we'll have some stories on aliens that probably didn't actually happen. Just people are stupid. So, again, I have a hard time in the month of October suspending disbelief and being like, oh yeah, it's a real magical world we live in with all these ghosts and demons and stuff. People are stupid. And that's my stance on it, but it's popular. I'm going to try my best again next month to be a little more open-minded. Not making any promises though. So that's it. Thank you so much for continuing to listen. Keep telling all your friends and keep it weird.
This is a podcast